The next piece we're about to present is entitled the Nguzo Saba Suite. Nguzo Saba meaning seven principles, and Kwanzaa meaning first fruits. This is a work focused on the African American holiday of Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa was created in the mid-1960s during the American Civil Rights and Black Power movements. In a time of incredible strife and struggle for African Americans, and also a time of some division within those African American communities as well. And so Dr. Maulana Karenga created this holiday based on seven Pan-African principles. They are unity, umoja, kujichagulia, self-determination, ujima, collective work and responsibility, Ujamaa, cooperative economics, Nia, purpose, Kuumba, creativity, and Imani, faith. And of course, African American peoples had been attempted to erase or take away some of the culture during the period of slavery, and yet Karenga viewed it so important to return to those Pan-African values, to unite African Americans through these principles. And he encouraged those people and communities to make them their own, to bring them into their home, into their community, and make it a part of tradition. And so those 7 nights start for the 7 days following Christmas. The composer Glenn Burley, he did just that. He made these 7 principles his own by adding a libretto, adding text to the 7 principles, and then setting it in a way that was incredibly personal for him and a reflection of all of his identities. And you'll hear and see these, but his identity as an American, as an African American, as a Christian, as a musician of the African diaspora, as a Western classical musician. And all of this culminates in this work that he wanted to be both for African American peoples, but also to build bridges between others. And so he commissioned this work at the University of Wisconsin Parkside, had it performed by his musicians there, and in his musical notes noted that this is a work for all people and all children of all nations. That said, we had to go deeper within ourselves and figure out, is this a work that we can perform? With our lack of lived experience and cultural experience, the voice in the music is a black voice that collectively we don't represent and haven't lived. And so we had to go in and have ask the questions, and largely because there are so many people behind me to whom these things matter. And what happened is we recognized that if we're going to present this work, we need to do it with integrity, to the best of our ability, with discernment, research, and dialogue. And so we went through a process where we openly shared thoughts and feelings about that, and investigated how we could ensure that we were as authentically and responsibly as possible taking this voice that is a little bit outside of us. So how did this work come to us? This was a piece that I had sung with the Nathaniel Dett Chorale, which is an Afrocentric professional chamber choir based here in Toronto. And through 7 seasons working with that ensemble, choral music, Afrocentric in nature by African composers or music of the African diaspora, was part of my study. And so through my director, Brainerd Blyden Taylor, I learned this music. That doesn't give me authority to teach or perform it, necessarily. And so both I and we came into this questioning of I want to see this work proliferate and shared. It's not been performed very many times. The Nathaniel Dett Chorale made the only recording that is in existence that I was a part of. And so it was with years that I had trepidation around presenting this, and then I came to a point where I was like, this is important work. And I'm grateful to the members of the choir who have supported me and us in investigating these questions, how to present this work with integrity. So we brought Brainerd Blyden Taylor, conductor of the Nathaniel Dett Chorale, in to work with us, and not only working musically, but in the fashion that he does so well, to work with the singers to connect with the Afrocentricity of the music and present it in an authentic way. So we had that opportunity with him. But further in those conversations, we realized that there is still work to be done. It's been an incredible learning and growing process, and we are united in our desire to do this after having feedback and dialogue, and yet we realize that we need to do this responsibly, and part of not culturally appropriating a work that is outside of our domain means that we need to recognize the culture and a culture of white supremacy that has allowed us to have the privilege to take a work from another culture and to present and perform it. And part of doing that well and right is making sure that some of the profit returns back to those communities through different action. And so we've made commitments to continue to partner with anti-racism organizations and to undergo anti-racism and training within our boards of directors. So that is part of the learning process, and we're approaching this with humility. We recognize that there were lots of things we could have done differently. We could have partnered with an Afrocentric choir. But we bring this to you having learned and grown through this experience, and so we are bringing our best selves to sharing this with you because we think that it's important to learn and understand all of the things that I've mentioned thus far. And so I guess in closing, my invitation to you would be during this holiday season to consider those communities, cultural and religious, that aren't a part of our dominant culture in December during the holidays. And what does it mean to have community, to be in relationship with family, with one another, with our diversity, and how can we ourselves educate and enlighten ourselves to the beliefs of others, and how can we support those so that we may live in a society of equity. Thank you. This is